Welcome, Anandini. Anandini just joined us from Switzerland there. Okay. Very well. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Hare Krishna. So we're studying Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 13, entitled Nature, the Enjoyer, and Consciousness. We're on text 21. Today's August 11th, 2021. Text 21 of chapter 13, Bhagavad Gita. Karya, Karana, Kartritve, Hetu, Prakriti, Uchyate, Purusha, Sukha, Dukhanam, Bhoktritve, Hetu, Uchyate, Karya Karana Kartritve, Hetu Prakritir Uchyate, Purusha Sukha Dukhanam, Bhoktritve Hetur Uchyate, Karya Karana Kartritve, Hetu Prakritir Uchyate, Purusha Sukha Dukhanam, Bhoktritve Hetur Uchyate, Karya Karana Kartritve, Hetu Prakritir Uchyate, Purusha Sukha Dukhanam, Bhoktritve Hetur Uchyate, Karya Karana Kartritve, Hetu Prakritir Uchyate, Purusha Sukha Dukhanam, Bhoktritve Hetur Uchyate,
Karya Karana Kartritve,
Karya Karana Kartritve, Hetu Prakritir Uchyate,
Purusha Sukha Dukhanam,
Purusha Sukha Dukhanam, Bhoktritve Hetur Uchyate,
Karya Karana Kartritve,
Karya Karana Kartritve, Hetu Prakritir Uchyate,
Purusha Sukha Dukhanam,
Purusha Sukha Dukhanam,
Bhoktritve Hetur Uchyate,
Bhoktritve Hetur Uchyate,
Karya Karana Kartritve,
Karya Karana Kartritve, Hetu Prakritir Uchyate, Purusha Sukha Dukhanam, Bhoktritve Hetur Uchyate,
Karya Karana Kartritve,
Karya Karana Kartritve, Hetu Prakritir Uchyate,
Purusha Sukha Dukhanam,
Purusha Sukha Dukhanam, Bhoktritve Hetur Uchyate. We're studying Bhagavad Gita chapter 13, text 21. If anyone else would like to recite the verse.
Karya Karana Kartritve,
Karya Karana Kartritve,
hetu praktiruchate.
Hetu prakritir uchyate.
Purusha sukha dukhanam.
Purusha sukha dukhanam.
Bhoktritve hetur uchate.
Bhoktritve hetur uchyate.
Arya karana kartritve
Karya karana kartritve.
hetu prakritir uchyate
Hetu prakritir uchyate.
purusa sukadukana
Purusha sukha dukhanam.
bokritve hetur uchyate.
Bhoktritve hetur uchyate. We'll go to the word for word. Karya,
Karya.
effect.
Effect.
Karana,
Karana.
cause.
Cause.
Kartritve,
Kartritve.
in the matter of creation.
In the matter of creation.
Hetu,
Hetu.
instrument.
Instrument.
Prakriti,
Prakriti.
material nature.
Material nature.
Uchyate,
Uchyate.
is said to be.
Is said to be.
Purusha,
Purusha.
the living entities.
Living entities.
Sukha,
Sukha.
happiness.
Happiness.
Dukhanam,
Dukhanam.
of distresses.
Of distresses.
Bhoktritve,
Bhoktritve.
in enjoyment.
In enjoyment.
Hetu,
Hetu.
instrument.
Instrument.
Uchyate,
Uchyate.
is said to be.
Is said to be.
Translation. Nature is said to be the cause of all material activities and effects, whereas the living entity is the cause of the various sufferings and enjoyments in this world. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The different manifestations of body and senses among the living entities are due to material nature. There are 8,400,000 different species of life, and these varieties are the creation of the material nature. They arise from the different sensual pleasures of the living entity, who thus desires to live in this body or that. When he is put into different bodies, he enjoys different kinds of happiness and distress. His material happiness and distress are due to his body and not to himself as he is. In his original state, there is no doubt of enjoyment. Therefore, that is his real state. Because of the desire to lord it over material nature, he is in the material world. In the spiritual world, there's no such thing. The spiritual world is pure, but in the material world, everyone is struggling hard to acquire victims who present different pleasures to the body. It might be more clear to state that this body is the effect of the senses. The senses are instruments for gratifying desire. Now, the sum total, body and instrument senses, are offered by material nature, and as will be clear in the next verse, the living entity is blessed or damned with circumstances according to his past desire and activity. According to one's desires and activities, material nature places one in various residential quarters. The being himself is the cause of his attaining such residential quarters and his attendant enjoyment or suffering. Once placed in some particular kind of body, he comes under the control of nature because the body, being matter, acts according to the laws of nature. At that time, the living entity has no power to change that law. Suppose an entity is put into the body of a dog. As soon as he is put into the body of a dog, he must act like a dog. He cannot act otherwise. And if the living entity is put into the body of a hog, then he is forced to eat stool and act like a hog. Similarly, if the living entity is put into the body of a demigod, he must act according to his body. This is the law of nature. But in all circumstances, the super soul is with the individual soul. That is explained in the Vedas as follows: Dva Suparna Sayuja Sakaya. The Supreme Lord is so kind upon the living entity that he always accompanies the individual soul and in all circumstances is present as the super soul or Paramatma. Om Jnana-timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayamrupa Kadamayam Derati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Cha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitan Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitam Stram Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagat Pate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Panchakalpata Yubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyeva Cha Patitanan Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Namo Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Prastaya Bhutale, Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine, Namaste Sarasvati Devi Gavani Pacharine, Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 13, text 21. Karya karana kartritve hetu prakritir uchyate purusha sukha dukkha nam bhoktritve hetu uchyate. Nature is said to be the cause of all material activities and effects, whereas the living entity is the cause of the various sufferings and enjoyments in this world. Hare Krishna. So we're talking here about activity and karma, and so Prabhupada's describing it in terms of the being himself is the cause of his attaining such residential quarters and his attendant enjoyment or suffering. It can sometimes seem complex about like who's the cause, what's the cause. Because sometimes it seems like, well, nature is the cause, God's the cause, Krishna's the cause, we're responsible. So this verse, these verses of Bhagavad Gita describe how all of that is true in different regards. Just like as an analogy that pretty much matches what's described here. So the government has different systems in place, university system and prison system. So let's say if we use our free will to commit some particular crime, all right, so then just like then the systems take their course and then we end up maybe in a maximum security prison, maybe a minimum security prison, maybe with a straitjacket. So we can say, no, just like the systems just did their thing, the government nature. So it just happened to me. Well, no, it didn't just happen to me. I'm completely responsible for being in this particular cell because I chose to commit a particular crime. So we might say, to take it out of the analogy, that there are 8,400,000 types of cells. That corresponds to the 8,400,000 types of species. And within each species, there's so much individuation, right? So it's no accident. We discussed this a few days ago that I got this, that I've entered this particular cell called David Wolf with a particular nose and ears and senses and birth in a particular, you might see, we can speak of griha. Griha is a household, but our body is also a griha or a kshetra. Griha kshetra sutapta vita. And this house is this particular community in which we're born, we live. It's a particular griha container. And it's not an accident. Yes, nature took its course, And we're in a particular apartment or compartment or a prison cell, according to our choices. And so on. So sometimes it's described, well, we have no choice. The example is given here that, okay, a dog's gonna bark. Dog's gonna bark, like it's got no choice. So there's no free will. No, it's all about free will. The spirit soul acted in such a way, committed particular types of crimes or whatever, to enter into a body, that dog. And then once there's a verse in Bhagavad Gita, Ishvara Sarvabhutana Videsha Junatishtati Brahmayan Sarva Bhutani Yantra Rudani Maya. Yantra means machine. Yantra means machine. So according to the modes of material nature that we choose to associate with, we're on the material energy in a particular way, in a particular machine. This particular body, that particular body, dog body, blade of grass body, squirrel body. Now, once we get on the machine in a particular way, then we're just carried by the machine. And it was our choices, our use or relative misuse of free will that got us stuck on the machine according to that mixture of the modes of material nature. An analogy we sometimes use as far as this cause and the complexity of it is like at a carnival or a circus. Sometimes we've got these hammer and bell games, right? The idea is you hammer onto the rubber thing and then the ball goes up, and if you did it hard enough, it rings the bell, right? Okay. So we're using this as a metaphor. So let's say there's a 4-year-old and he goes, "Oh, Dad, I want to play that. I want to play that." Okay. So Dad says, "Okay, fine." All right. So Dad pays the money, and then the 4-year-old can't even lift the hammer, right? I mean, he just can't. But Dad is there saying like, "Okay." So Dad's standing behind him. "Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3." And the bell rings. So we could ask the question, who caused the bell to ring? So we could say, well, the 4-year-old child, he wasn't even strong enough to lift the hammer. Yeah, but he did it because if it wasn't for his intention, that bell would not ring. So there's truth in that. Same time, it's not the complete picture. You can say, well, it was the dad. He paid the money. It was his muscle power. So it was the dad. So there's truth to that too. We could say, well, it was the whole contraption, like the 3 modes of nature. It was the whole contraption set up by the circus owner. So there's the demigods, there's the modes of nature, there's the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and there's the will of the living entities. So it's clear, but there's complexity into this whole thing, and that, even that is a bit simplified. Later in Bhagavad, in chapter 18, Krishna describes there's 5 factors as the cause of all action, and our use of free will is one of those factors. And so, as human beings, these are the sorts of discussions that we're encouraged to have, by those who are realized in these ancient wisdom traditions. We're meant to be philosophers. We're meant to be philosophers, to not just act automatically on the machine of material energy. Right? So that's the thing. There's 8,400,000 types of species, but in the dog body, the squirrel body, the tree body, there's no capacity for this sort of analysis. There's no capacity for this. So kamasya nendriya pritir labu jiveta yavata jivasya tattva jigyasa nartayasya karma bi. That in the human form of life, life's desire should never be directed towards sense gratification. Human life, spiritual beings having a human experience, human life is meant for inquiry into the absolute truth. Yes, we should aspire to keep the body and soul together nicely in a healthy way, and aspire for the absolute truth. I aspire for self-realization, aspire to understand who am I, what is matter, what is spirit, what's the actual purpose of my life, why am I suffering when the machine of material energy, right? Described here, because all species, there's the problems of birth, death, old age, disease, eating, sleeping, mating, defending. Paramparayas in his class talked about miseries of human existence. Sometimes Prabhupada describes that, like, so this is because all species, like, where's food, where's sex, where's a place to sleep. And he says that eating, sleeping, and mating, sometimes these problems are solved, right? Like, no, I'm full, I'm satisfied, don't want to eat anymore. I mean, 6 hours later, it's a problem again, like that. No, but fearing in material consciousness, by in material consciousness, the fearing, that's a constant problem. Because even if everything else, no, I'm doing good, I got a comfortable apartment, and I'm good. But there's like fear, it's going to be taken away. Fear, but I'm going to grow old and I won't enjoy it anymore. But I could get a terrible disease. So fearing, that's a constant problem in material consciousness. And so we're meant to be philosophers. We're meant to inquire, and not just for some intellectual stimulation, not for just, but philosophy means search for truth and live truth. Search for truth and live truth. And lacking that, then it's some form of intellectual animalism. It's just glorified forms of eating, sleeping, mating, defending. Just like, okay, so so this body is always changing, but there's some constant identity. I call David, you call Laura, like that, you call Vishnu, okay. Right, so that means I'm not the body, all right. So that's philosophy, logic, experience. But then, okay, so then what's it mean to live as a spirit soul? So not just to analyze philosophy, but then to live the Siddhanta, to live the conclusions of philosophy. What's it mean to live as not the body, a spirit soul? And that's, yesterday during the class and at the prasadam table, we had some very enlivening discussions. Yes. So, because any karma that we create, whether it's relatively good or bad, that keeps us on the machine made of material energy. So, matras varshas tukontia shitoshna sukadukada agama paino nijas tams titikshas vabharata. So the encouragement is the appearance of happiness and distress, and their disappearance in due course. They arise from sense perception. And to tolerate them and to learn what it means to live a karma-free life. Otherwise, lacking that, we may be Mr. Nice Guy or Mr. Nice Girl. But Prabhupada is a very poignant term here. The spiritual world is pure, but in the material world, everyone is struggling hard to acquire victims who present different pleasures to the body. So, like, that's not very flattering, but that's what we're doing in material existence. We're struggling hard to acquire victims who present different pleasures to the body. I don't find that flattering. It's not complimentary. Now, see, in material life, but sometimes it's just like, I'll victimize you and send you to a hellish condition, and you're happy to victimize me to send me to a hellish condition. So it's like, it's a good business deal. Okay. Just This is just Prabhupada gives it as it is. It's a good business deal. Hellish condition means I'm gonna support you to fall further into illusion, to forgetfulness of who you are as an eternal spirit soul and a servant of God. And I'm gonna implicate you more in believing and being entrenched in the conception that you are the material body. Right? And that's the source of pain. That's a source of pain. That's a source of suffering, source of agony, torment, hellish condition. So and sometimes it's all done in the name of love, love, love. Right? So actually it's violence in the name of love, spiritual violence. So actual love is in however we're relating with any species to support each other in realizing in coming to truth, not numbing the truth, not numbing the pain of being alienated from the truth of who I am. If we're supporting each other to numb each other, that's violence. We might call it affection or love. Real exchange of affection is encouraging, supporting, caring enough about each other to not care whether we like each other, supporting each other to distinguish reality from illusion and come towards living a truly karma-free life. So we're meant to not just, and this victims, the acquired victims who present different pleasures to the body, just to a little nuance around that. So it could be the gross sense pleasure, and just the idea of the senses. See, like these eyes, these ears, this nose, the tongue, in a sense, these aren't the senses, these are the seats. These are the seats where the senses we acquired with our subtle body sit. So like our sense of smell sits in the physical contraption of the nose, our sense of sight. So it gets into subtle understanding of what senses really means, right? Yam yam vapi sman vavam chajajante klevam tom tom evidikonti asadata baba babita. Whatever state we're absorbed in when the soul leaves the body, which is largely determined by where we absorbed ourselves during our life, then we get another body with a particular, as described in chapter, with a particular type of nose and hands and legs and eyes like that. So the subtle body carries its senses, and then the external manifestations made of earth, where these are the seats of the senses, really. And so so to understand this philosophy and to live it, and Krishna says right towards the end of Bhagavad Gita, Sarvadaman Parityagya Mamekam Sharanam Vraja Aham Tvam Sarva Papebhyo Mokshaya Mima Shucha. That's like the ultimate karma-free life. He says, give up all other processes, which might be helpful. They support, they serve pure bhakti yoga. Would come somehow or other, come to bhakti yoga, surrender unto me, serve me with devotion, and I'll deliver you. You'll be free from all karma. And so we've talked in recent classes, cultivating sattvic qualities is important, and it's not the ultimate goal. Like the airport example, we've used that. If we neglect cultivating sattvic qualities in the name of, I just do transcendental devotional service, we might be doing a spiritual bypass, which, and then our spiritual growth is stunted, and we might be causing a lot of pain and torment for others in the name of transcendence, and we might be acting in very harsh ways and never look at the weeds in our heart. Again, we don't want to neglect the cultivation of sattvic qualities. Yesterday I was conducting a session with a 13-year-old girl, teenager, And she's very, very passionate about vegetarianism. Very passionate about vegetarianism. She's about to go into 8th grade, and they need to do like a year thesis project. She's going to do it in that. But anyhow, so she was sharing. She was sharing. Her and her family went on a family vacation. They went on a family vacation, and she took a friend with her, one of her best friends, and so they were, in the mountains, and the car, like a bear came out, and the car hit the bear, and then apparently the bear was injured. Probably the bear went back into the forest and died. So my client, the 13-year-old, was saying that her friend was just like really sobbing. Her friend was sobbing uncontrollably, like this, because it was like actually seeing the pain that the bear's in. And they did it. They hit the car, hit them. What could they do? The bear ran in front. Okay, but the friend was sobbing uncontrollably. So understandably, that's natural empathy, compassion. But then my client said, 2 minutes later, maybe it was 5 minutes, but 2 minutes later, so they all went for like a rest stop at a restaurant, and the friend was eating chicken. So, it's a true story. It's fresh in my heart right now. And so my client was pointing out, like, well, you're crying about the bear, but then you're eating dead chicken. You just to satisfy your tongue and belly. And now my client admitted that she a bit lost it, and she sort of was like yelling and angry. And she knew that probably won't help her friend or others or her classmates get it. So she sees that if she wants to be effective, she needs to control her senses and present things rationally and with not suppressing emotion, but controlled expression of emotion. So, okay, so they're, at 13 years old, she's trying to support her friend to live a philosophical life, right? Like what's the logic? What's the rationale here? You're crying. Here's one animal, and another animal. You're not crying. You're enjoying the taste of its blood and flesh. So how does that make sense? So these are that's well, we're bigger than the chicken, and they're stupid, so we can kill them. Okay, so is that the principle you want to live for? So what are the principles we're living for? Also, related here to karma and living a philosophical life, what we discussed also yesterday, post-class at the prasadam table, the principle of experience, my experience, because the idea, it's just like, so the spirit soul gets a particular prison sentence, okay, to be in a David Wolf body for a certain amount of time, to be in a squirrel body, to be in a dog body. And in that body, there's a particular, Prabhupada, makes that distinction. Material happiness. So we have like a certain amount of material happiness allotted to us according to, the prison cell we create, material happiness and material distress. And so if the material pain that we're meant to experience, and we don't experience that because we're numbing ourselves through internet or going shopping or drugs or sex or, we all have our different numbing strategies. If we're numbing ourselves rather than experiencing my experience of pain, of shame, frustration, of affection, experiencing my experience is different than giving power to my experience, right? I can experience my experience of anger and resentment. Doesn't mean that I need to let my anger and resentment make my decisions for me. There's a distinction. But if I don't allow myself to experience it, then I'm still going to need to experience it later in this life, or maybe I'll need to take another birth to experience those painful emotions those painful experiences that I numbed myself to. So again, this is applied philosophy. Applied philosophy. So cultivating like this, experiencing my experience in Vedic terms, that means sattvic living. It means we're connected. It means we're connected. It's not like some new age thing. Feel your feelings. Yeah, experiencing my experience. That's sattva. It's the doorway to transcendence. Experience my experience in the container of living purposefully. Living purposefully indicates cultivating transcendence. Like, otherwise I can get so attached to the car and the experience, the human experience. I don't want to deny the human experience, because then I'll likely need to come back to, and we talked about that in relation to vegetarianism, that if we kill an animal simply to satisfy our taste buds and belly, okay, that animal had a particular sentence to be in the body of the pig, the cow, or the chicken for a certain amount of time. And then we're interrupting its natural spiritual evolution. And then so we're impeding its spiritual progress. We're cutting its life short. Okay. And as a basic, just like, well, we're not the body, so what's the problem with killing bodies? Well, just like, I'm not the car. You're not your car, you're not your house. Does that give me the right to start coming to your house and smashing the windows or puncturing your tires? No. Okay. So yeah, we use that the cleaning analogy yesterday also. So we want to clean our hearts. Prabhupada talks about that here, about cleaning our hearts. And I can say that I have only hardly even a few drops of realization, but for sure I experience whenever I'm involved in chanting, morning program, Bhagavad Gita discussions, kirtan, I experience my heart being cleansed. So like, my foolishness is that I don't stay in that activity regularly or steadily. But I have enough experience to know this process definitely 100% works, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. To whatever extent I give myself to this process, experience my heart being cleansed. And with a dirty heart, Prabhupada yesterday used the term, with our mind in the gutter, with the dirty heart, then it's a miserable life. That's why I like the regulative principles. It's not about, oh, we can't do that. It's like, that's for our bliss. Because violating such basic principles, then I'm miserable. And those regular principles, they create a safe road for me, for me to go towards my actual happiness, for me to go towards my actual, that sort of bliss. Savai pum samparo dhammo yatro bhaktir huksaje aituke pritita yatma suprasidati. That sort of bliss that's uninterrupted, unending. It's not dependent. It's the soul awake to itself in devotional connection with Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's being unstoppable. Nothing can take that away. And being with our experience, assessing ourselves, cleansing our heart as part of the conscious process of bhakti, that's vital. Yesterday we used the analogy that, okay, so analysis is a helpful tool to help us understand all these distinctions between spirit and matter, spirit and supreme spirit. How am I the cause? How am I not the cause? At the same time, we gave the analogy, like if we want to clean a room, then okay, it can be helpful to understand something about how the room got this way. At the same time, we don't want to be like, before I start cleaning, I'm going to catalog every piece of dust and I want to know where it came from. Take a few. Why don't you just like start cleaning the room? Like, why don't you just start cleaning the room? No, I want to understand where. Nah, okay, it's like maybe all this wanting to understand is because I don't really want to clean the room. No, I'm thinking about it. So, yes, right. Where did that old sandwich under the bed come from? I'm not going to start cleaning that old sandwich until I understand. And what moved me to leave it there 3 weeks ago, till I see what it was about the way my mother treated me. I'm keeping that sandwich there. So no, there's a place for analysis, and we can also use it as a barrier to like, let's get involved in the watering process and the cleansing process. Let's and Ata Shri Krishna Namadi Namba Begram Indra Seven Mukhi Jividas Fayam Sarmupakadamayam. That by engaging the material senses, including like right now we're engaging the tongue and the ears in hearing transcendental sound vibration. A few minutes ago we were dancing, we're engaging the whole body in kirtan, we were chanting japa. Soon we'll taste Krishna Prasadam. So the question could be, well, how can the materials, if they're material, how can they be engaged spiritually? No, just like in the well, okay, so the purpose of these senses ultimately is to engage in liberation, to engage in transcendence. The purpose of these senses, our tongue, our eyes, our mind, is to engage, and then in that way we spiritualize our senses, and we experience more and more the clean happiness that comes from doing the austerity to engage our senses spiritually. So these senses are meant to be engaged spiritually. Okay. Okay, I'll read the verse again. This is text 21, chapter 13, Bhagavad Gita. Karya karana kartritve hetu prakriti uchyate purusha sukha dukhanam bhoktritve hetu uchyate. Nature is said to be the cause of all material activities and effects, whereas the living entity is the cause of the various sufferings and enjoyments in this world. Hare Krishna, thanks for your presence and association. I welcome any comments or questions. Bhakta Len.
Yes, so I'm thinking about this idea that the stress that we have in this material body, and if we just try and numb the pain,
Yeah.
and avoid the unhappiness, we're just delaying our spiritual development. I mean, intellectually, I understand that, but in actual practicality, in practical purposes, we do want to avoid pain.
Yeah.
It's really, who wants to experience it, you know?
Right.
So yeah, so that's going on, and at the same time, I'm thinking that, well, my spirit soul,
Yeah.
is blissful all the time.
Spiritual.
And that's who I really am.
Yes, yes.
And so this body isn't really who I really am. So if the body and the subtle mind is experiencing unhappiness, it's easy to just get into a place of, well, forget all that. That's not really, you know, who you are.
Right.
Ignore it.
Yes.
And just go with the bliss. That's where my mind is going.
All right,
anyway.
right. Yeah.
So it's just, yeah, so it's like, maybe it's a transcendental, maybe it's a spiritual bypass that I'm doing here, I don't know, but I go through great lengths to avoid the suffering and the pain, you know, and so, yeah, it's just, I don't have a question or a comment, it's just, it's frustrating to be in this, I mean, I want to make spiritual advancement
Yeah,
intellectually, I do. I don't want to come back. I don't want to even come back in this world. This material world is horrible. It's getting worse and worse.
you're feeling finished.
I really don't want to be here.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not even going to be around in 20 years, I don't think. But where am I going to be in the next life? You know, am I really preparing? I'm not, see, that's why I'm an illusion. I'm not really preparing myself for what's to come. I'm still wallowing in the,
Which means you're not going for the bliss.
I'm not going for the ultimate bliss. Yes, right.
So that's why, like, in what you shared originally, I thought, like, well, Len could be doing a spiritual bypass, but he could just be doing something spiritual. So that's what the question that came to me is, what's that mean for you? Go for the bliss.
Yeah, well, because my mind is still kind of stuck in the material consciousness, going for the bliss is satisfying my senses. And so that's why I'm an illusion. I'm just not realizing what that greater bliss feels like or what it could be. I'm not imagining it. I'm not experiencing it. Yeah. So
That's it. In other words, like, yeah, it's kind of like, okay, all these experiences, and this, it could be like, yeah, I don't need to catalog every piece of dust or exactly how the sandwich got there, you know, like that. And so let me just start clean. So let me, like, I don't need to experience everything. Let me just engage with intensity in chanting attentively and in absorbing myself in shlokas and sharing Krishna consciousness. I don't need to catalog everything. So if that's what you mean, then that's not a spiritual bypass necessarily. That's spiritual. But see, the idea of experience, my experience, let's just take that example, maybe, you know, many-year-old we could relate to. Well, okay, so just like, so, so you and me, we're not in a body that's 25 years old. I'm just guessing, okay, right. So, all right, so then with this kind of old age thing, there's a particular experience of like material suffering, like that. And if we allow ourselves to experience it, then that can move me like, I don't want to take birth again. Whereas if I numb it, then I might not get intense from my liberation devotional process. Or just like we gave the bear dying on the road, the meat, the animals example, right? So, okay, so, and the thing about that, my client got angry at her friend like that, but because it's like, oh, what are you doing to the animals? But we can go more into it. It's like, what are you doing to yourself? Because like right now I'm implicated in killing this animal so I can enjoy its flesh and blood. All right, that means that sometime later in this life or in another body, that some living entity is going to exploit and harm and cause pain, maybe agonizing pain to your body, so they can enjoy. I mean, that's what it means. So what are you doing to yourself? So that kind of like, let's just take that example. So he was like, well, like I just buy a Whopper at Burger King. I just buy packaged meat at Publix. Okay. Whereas like,
wait, are you making faces that are funny? I want to see the acting.
oh, okay, sorry. I'm sorry. Okay. And so no, so let's look at it in terms of, whereas let's say like if I'm there, like Paul McCartney said, if slaughterhouses had glass walls, everyone would be vegetarian, something like that. Yeah. So let's say we're there, and it's not just buying a Whopper, it's not just packaged meat, like that. So then it's okay, then we're experiencing. Okay, so then that pain, I mean, that would be agony, right? Like most people would throw up if they see what goes behind the Whopper or the packaged meat. Most people would just like throw up, right? So like experience the pain of the death, the agony that I'm involved in. That might move me. That might move me in 10 seconds to like, I'm not getting involved in that karma anymore, right? So rather than numb my experience, that's like a gross example to bring home the point that this experience is not just a new age thing, feel your feelings. It's to support us, to move us to get urgent about really living a transcendental karma-free life. Whereas, again, if I keep numbing the pain, and it's a package in Hitchcock's, it's the Big Mac or whatever. Okay, then I might be implicated in getting victims for my enjoyment and being victimized by others. I might be victimized for another 100,000 lifetimes instead of experience the experience of that torture and pain. In 10 seconds, I'm finished with.
Okay, I appreciate that about looking at it from the distress angle.
Yeah.
Now, could you look at it again from the happiness angle?
Okay.
That I seem to be satisfied with whatever pleasurable experiences I am indulging in, and I don't see the transcendental bliss that I could be getting if I got a little more advanced spiritually.
Yeah.
So, yeah, talk about a little more about the happiness angle and how I'm an illusion by thinking that, yeah, okay, if I, I'm having pleasure with my material senses.
Yes.
And enjoying it for the few seconds, whatever that I am.
Yes.
And then you go back, of course, and then back to square one very quickly. You know, like you with the food, right? With chocolate or ice cream, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I really want that ice cream, and just the wanting of it is the pleasure part. Actually, when actually eating of it isn't that satisfactory. But anyway,
Yes.
the point is that how do we get beyond just seeking material, satisfying our senses materially and get the happiness there, and seeing the illusion that is. You know?
Yeah. Thanks for that. And that's why, like, that's why we quoted one verse from Gita, another verse, to the 15th verse of the second chapter. Yam hina vyatyante te pusham pusharshabha sama dukkha sukham dhira samritabhaya kapade. And so Krishna says, like, yeah, one who's steady in happiness and distress, tolerates happiness and distress. So the distress part is easier to get. But then, so happiness kind of like, this chair is so comfy. Ugh, need to tolerate that. This pizza is so yummy. Oh, I need to tolerate this pizza.
Yeah.
But that's what it is. So that requires some philosophical intelligence. It requires some philosophical intelligence that, like, yeah, okay, right now, relative to yesterday, relative to her or him, doing pretty good things. It's a nice day. It's 72 degrees. You know, like things are nice. It requires some philosophical intelligence to not let the distress and not let the material distress and material happiness, not let that deviate me, not let that take me off center from steadily, enthusiastically engaging in devotional service and cultivating the ever-increasing bliss of the soul. So that takes some, otherwise, and because what you're saying, that's what Queen Kunti, she says the same thing. Janmeshwara Shritashvir Edamana Puman Naivarhat Yabidat Tumbai Tvama Kinchana Gochara. She says one who has pretty nice, relatively speaking, material happiness in the form of birth in a nice family, bodily attractiveness, education, material wealth. It's difficult for them to get urgent, to get Divrena Bhakti Yogena Yajita Purusha Para. And that's why she related to what you're sharing, Bhaktilan. She praised, so Krishna, bring the calamities again and again.
No.
I'm not like that.
Yeah.
So we can admire Queen Kunti, but like, no, I got enough calamities, thank you. But so she's a very exalted soul. She's very exalted. She's because, like, when there's calamities, that's when I'm intensely remembering you and wanting to serve you. When things are going pretty nice, not so much. But that's her humility to say that. So that's the thing. So when things are going pretty nice in terms of whatever, health, economics, fine day, friendships, nice food, nice house, whatever. When things are going pretty nice, where people are appreciating me on the subtle platform. Wow, people are adoring me. People are praising me. Oh, this is pretty nice. Why do I need to get intense about serving Krishna? And that requires some austerity to not indulge in the niceness. And like, okay, experience it,
But don't be attached to it.
don't be attached to it, and continue with steadiness and devotional service to cultivate the actual bliss of the soul that's not dependent on whether I'm being praised, I'm being insulted. My body's healthy, now has a terrible disease, to cultivate the bliss of the soul. Thank you, Bhaktivinoda. Welcome any other comments or questions, if anyone would like.
Wow, I'm so grateful for this. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
During chanting this morning, I was really glad that I woke up at 3:30 when we had knocked on the door.
We're appreciating that Leia Lakshmi Priya cared enough about you to get you up at 3:30.
Yeah. And I haven't been up during these spiritual hours of the day much lately. And I at first was thinking maybe I should go for the prasadam. And then I was like, no, that didn't really move me.
Okay, yeah.
Instead, I was like, I want to go chant 16 rounds. Because I know that's what I've been needing. And it wasn't perfect. I could have tried harder, but I know that I really gave myself to the process.
Yeah.
And I wanted to cry.
Mm.
And I knew, like, I guess some of what you shared was really the chanting Hare Krishna. The approaching chanting with the consciousness of please accept me.
Yeah.
That was really powerful for me
Yeah.
as like a center point to come back to.
Yeah.
And also to throughout the process, like I feel like I can disconnect when I chant sometimes, and it can just become surface, mundane,
mechanical. Yeah.
right. But this time I was really committed to making the most of the present moment while I was here.
Yeah.
And it's like feeling the pain that was coming out in my heart. And at one moment I sobbed pretty hard, as quietly as I could. And I was feeling what was underlying this anxiety and fear that I had not too long ago. My mom was hospitalized.
Yeah.
She had a fall, and I was afraid that she wasn't going to take care of herself and go to the ER that night. And I did a bunch of research and found that there was like perhaps a 10% chance of fatality. And I'm not in control. And I tried my best to just trust her and being the expert in her own life. But it was hard, and I had a lot of anxiety. The next day I heard from her. But I think that day I faced the reality of my mom's mortality. And today yeah, chanting helped me to more fully experience the grief and attachment that I have to her. And yeah, so like, there are other things, but that was the most moving one for me. And I feel that every time that I do really give myself to chanting sincerely, honestly, with humility, like knowing that this is the most important thing that I can do, then there's transformation that happens. Is usually, I mean, it's not immediate, but there's incremental relief that I experience in my physical body.
Yeah.
I experience my heart. It's like the layers that are keeping the boiling emotional pain from being experienced. I feel that they're like the layers dissolve or something through this process, and then I'm right there.
You're encountering yourself in a raw way.
Yeah, and it's like that pain. I notice that my anxiety and tension in my body, even like aches and pains, that those things start to dissolve.
To dissolve, yeah.
In fully making contact with the emotional pain that's there. So that's really, this very powerful experience today. I wasn't like perfect, but I think I was more rigorous than I've been in a long time. And I had lots of inspirations, like the idea of committing to doing 16 rounds a day for the first time felt like I had more of an appetite for that than like fear of commitment around that.
Yeah, the inspiration was more than the fear, maybe for the first time. Because you had an experience. You had an experience. You had a direct experience because you did some austerity and got up at 3:30 a.m. and you full program and you had an experience, and that moved. The inspiration became greater to feel, oh, I get this commitment to 16 rounds per day, and you had an experiential inspiration. Mention, I'm inspired by all of your sharing, Stephanie, and including because right before japa we read from Prabhupada some excerpt, and it's moving for me that Prabhupada's words, it set the mood for you. It provided, like it touched your heart, provided a container for the chanting for the next 2 hours. So that's confirmational for me about that part of the program. It's a vital part of the powerful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thanks for expressing.
And also I felt the power of association and chanting together.
Yeah.
And specifically when you first started chanting and when you had Prabhupada chanting.
Yes.
And just like the sober focus, like the container of social support for that I think that really supported me.
It was synergistic, and that was part of the uplifting experience that went right to the core of your soul. Prabhupada, we're chanting with Prabhupada, and we're all chanting together. That enriched the whole transcendental atmosphere.
Yeah, like I have more and more confirmation at an embodied physical level of this process working for me. Yeah, so it's really amazing. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Hare Krishna. Gajendra.
wanted to look at one of the statements that was made regarding, karma and killing an animal or interfering with the life of the animal. It's I'm not sure how to understand it because it really doesn't make perfect sense to me. It had to do with that you're interfering with the karma of the animal. And I'm just questioning, how do we interfere with really the karma of any living entity? I want to come back to that. I want to say, transcendentally speaking, someone performing devotional service, spreading the holy name, may actually affect a person's karma by getting them on the spiritual path. And pure. So that's not what I'm talking about. But the idea of, like, if I kill an animal, like it had its karma, like as if it was its karma, like to live such a period of life, and I've interfered with that by killing it. That doesn't make sense to me. Do you know where I'm at already, or would you like me to explain further?
I think I understand. Yeah, I'll just, if you're mute, you won't get the echo. I understand, and I don't have a good explanation. I do know I've heard or read that from Prabhupada. I read it from Prabhupada, so I know it's true. As far as how it's true, because I guess it would seem that, okay, so if it's a cow who goes to the slaughterhouse rather than a cow that's protected for its whole life, then that cow's karma was to go to the slaughterhouse. So I believe I see what you're saying, that was, we're not interfering with the karma. At the same time, I know we are interfering with its evolution back to the human species. I guess my sense about that, and just for discussion, not a conclusive response, is like, in the human form of life, we have free will. And if we use our free will to, like, let's say, kill the cow and chicken and pigs, then like it's human life, we can affect karma in different ways, of course, by cultivating sattva-gun, cultivating transcendence. And so we do affect karma. And also a principle is, Krishna is very expert, and he achieves many things. He achieves many things with one act. And so Krishna through Maya. And so sure, we can say that animal that was slaughtered the animal that was slaughtered, we can say, well, that was that animal's karma to be slaughtered in the slaughterhouse. At the same time, as spirit souls having human experience, we have the choice to not do that. And then that, my understanding is that accelerates the spirit soul in the animal body. It accelerates as they get to the human form. So, yeah, and I'd see this, just a comment from, we have a few comments, nice. So Parampara writes, I appreciate Gajendra bringing that up, because I've heard people use the rationale that by killing an animal, we are speeding up that soul's evolution, because then it goes to its next body. My understanding from Prabhupada is we're not speeding it up. Yeah, we're impeding it. And I see Ladini Shakti, you have a comment or a question.
Hi, Krishna. This is Malini Devidasi.
Oh, no.
The way I understand it is that when Srila Prabhupada, Prabhupada speak to the listener or to the person reading.
Yeah.
Don't interfere with the karma of other living entity if you can avoid it. Of course, we are going to interfere. We interfere all the time. We walk on ants, we interfere all the time. But at least consciously don't do that, because this is going to embed your own progress. Not, like, so in that way, it's not that we have the power, let's say, to interfere, but we are warned against doing that. That's how I understand it.
I think that's a great perspective. I appreciate that, Melanie. Yeah, so like Prabhupada's explaining it to us, like let's not consciously implicate ourselves in the suffering of the animal, our own future suffering. Let's not implicate ourselves. Okay, now if someone does engage in animal slaughter like that, okay, then maybe that's the animal's karma, or we can get into that discussion. But Prabhupada's encouraging whoever he can inspire, don't consciously add to your karma like that. Thanks for that important perspective.
This is Ladini. I also have a comment to that, if I may.
Yeah.
Like the way how I am looking at it is that, like, if I kill the animal will have in the next life the propensity to kill me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So from that perspective, I feel like affecting the karma of the other one is like this never-ending story of the samsara.
Yeah.
Because I don't think it's like the animal killed me in my last life, so now I'm killing it and it's over.
Right, not over. Right.
Like until like one of us like really breaks it, it like goes on eternally.
Right.
Change. So that's how I'm thinking about it. And then all these karmic reactions are like for us, like for everyone to come closer to compassion and like the human like qualities. And then like, let's say the animal is supposed to be slaughtered, but it's not slaughtered. So then there can be transformation of the heart too. Like there are animals who have been saved from slaughter, and we can see like their heart, like they're so much softer because they are like moved by, like even like between human and human, like if someone treats me with compassion, it might soften my heart, even though before I felt like enraged and vicious. So I think that's way how we can affect each other's karma by like really setting up example, even in the relationship between the human and the animal.
Thanks for that salient point. Thank you, Ladini. That's it. Yeah, by killing the animal, we're perpetuating the whole envy karma. Envy me, like I envy your very right to exist. You exist just to be dominated by me, to be enjoyed. So it's like, and so we're just perpetuating that whole, and that's the consciousness we're giving to the universe. We're giving it the ether. Envy. I'm going to crush you. You don't even have a right to exist. And then that will come back to us, and that's the consciousness we're giving to the animal and throughout the whole universe. So that's it. So karma free means, okay, maybe I do have a karmic debt right to kill that animal because in a previous life it killed me. But then that's the samsara. So our opportunity in the human form is stop. I'm not perpetuating this envy cycle anymore.
Prabhu, I have part two to my question. First, I want to say that I'm not really thinking we interfere with the karma per se. It's more what Melanie brought up. It's about more our culpability due to our conscious participation.
Yes.
Part two. So in a situation where, let's say, an animal is being killed, but it's not for a slaughterhouse, for dominance, for enjoyment of the tongue, but let's say, for example, it's one's beloved dog or a cow that they see as spirit soul, part and parcel of Krishna, and this is the cow that has been giving milk to Krishna, or the dog that's been helping care for the Dham or protect the cows. And this animal is very ill, perhaps with cancer, is down and suffering. So there is amongst some the school of thought, well, you just let that play out. because that's that animal's karma. And the other school of thought is, no way, not on my watch, I'm going to chant Hare Krishna while euthanizing the animal. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Okay, I appreciate that. Well, it's definitely a different scenario than the slaughtering animals for my taste buds like that. So it's definitely a different scenario. I mean, we have a few minutes if we want. I mean, because would anyone else like to share any thoughts or views related to Gajendra's animal euthanasia question?
I can just share my feeling, like,
Yeah.
I'm putting myself in the position of the living entity, and then in a sense, the suffering of that living entity, my suffering, because recently I thought about those topics a lot. You know, I would have loved to someone euthanizing me. You know, in the sense that would have been such a relief. And at the same time, there was another part of me that was thinking like, but it's not the end of the suffering. So the suffering that this body carry is also in my subtle body. So I'm just going to carry that suffering with me in my next life. And really my desire is that for that next life, to have less, you know, suffering or sinful reaction from whatever sinful activity that's embedding my spiritual life. And so from my point of view, like, let's say I'm not a dog, but I'm putting myself in that shoes. I will rather suffer in this life and finish the sufferings that belong to me in this life, rather than carrying it into the next life.
Thanks for that, Melanie. Thanks for that. Dr. Lynn?
Yeah, I'm not sure what Melanie's point was, but
I think her point related to experience the experience. And if we cut the experience short, then we need to go into another body to experience it.
okay, but I was thinking that, you know, if you see a living entity suffering, and you see a homeless person on the street and they're suffering, and that's our karma to suffer, yet you have the free will to alleviate their suffering, isn't it sattvic to try and do that? And is that hindering their spiritual progress? I don't see it as hindering their spiritual progress. I see it as doing something sattvic to help relieve the suffering of humanity. Yeah. And so,
But I'm trying to get the comparison, because like if we see a homeless person suffering, we're not going to kill the homeless person.
exactly.
We might give them prasad or something like that.
Right. If they're sick, and you can, you know, get them to the hospital, or if they're hungry, you give them some food, and that's not getting in the way of their karma, and that's not hurting our karma, right? I mean, that's,
Well, if we're acting in a good way, we're getting good karma, which means maybe we'll take a next birth and we help the homeless person, so we'll have a nice residence. We maybe we'll take birth as a demigod like that. So Prabhupada says if we're trying to help and our efforts are in tamas or rajas, we're doing more harm than good. If our efforts are sattvic, we're doing some good. And to really do good, we want to help them in a transcendental way. So, okay, I'll give some food, but if the food is prasadam, then we're really helping them cultivate the bliss of the soul, and we're helping ourselves too.
okay. Or if we get them to a doctor, is that tamas or?
No, that's good. That's good. But let's say we get them to a doctor and we put them in our car and we're spending money for that's good. That's good. Now let's say the doctor heals them and then they go out, they're healthy, and they buy crack cocaine and they sell it to the teenagers at the high school. Now I'm at home thinking, I am such a good person. I'm a really good person. wow, there's this helpless person. So this is karma. So we did good and like that, but it's not so philosophically based.
Right.
Okay, so we get good karma. We helped someone heal, took them to a doctor. We get some bad karma because that 14-year-old got addicted to crack cocaine because of us. So that's why I was like, this is a complicated place. So that's why it's like, go for the transcendence as much as possible towards 100%. Thank you. I appreciate the discussion. Krishna says in the fourth, the principle of karma is simple. The details, Krishna says, the details get complex. Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.
Thank
Namo.
you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya.